All right, let's wrap. All right, we're going to get back to it. All right, so I love color if you haven't figured it out. So COVID comes along, and I can't go and talk about color. I can't go and travel, you know, everything's virtual. And so Elijah Meeks, anybody know Elijah Meeks? He's one of the co-founders of the Data Visualization Society. At the time, he was editor of Nightingale. He said, why don't you share with us your knowledge about color? Pardon me? Elijah Meeks was the original editor of the Nightingale. I promise you. I promise you. You can, I know who Jason Forrest is very well. But I promise you, Elijah Meeks was the original editor in like 2000. Because I was there, and I have the email, if you want me to prove it to you. I'm a bad person to contest. Remember something, I've been to every single visualization conference. I do not have Alzheimer's. My memory is highly good, and I'm scary about stuff like that. But anyway, Elijah Meeks at the time when he was editor, because he was founding the Data Visualization Society, sent me an email and said, why don't you share your perspectives on color? So I wrote an article. It's the top one up here. I talked about the Albers app and everything. And Elijah, the reason I know it is because Elijah edited. As a matter of fact, there was a staff of editors they would later hire. And I will give the guy credit who went on to hire it. And Elijah, at that time, he was editor, and he was also, he edited my writing. And so I published, and then I started, and I got into this thing, and Jason went on, and other people. Mary Abiles, she is the managing editor now. But the guy that I'm really indebted to is a guy named Georges Hattab. So we're going to talk about this. But anyway, I got into this doing color writing, and I loved it. I absolutely loved writing this stuff. And here is my latest writing. I have since stopped exclusively writing for Nightingale, and I started a group with UX Collective approached me, and it's actually a broader audience in the UX Collective. And my latest writing is right up here. So as a result of doing this, I came up with this five-stage process that I published in 2021 in Nightingale for colorizing data visualizations. So the 5 stages are: establish your data classes for visualization and key color for visualization. Select your color rule, color harmony. Build your color scheme in step 3. Check and revise for color deficiencies. Remember, I've gone through color deficiencies. We're like, come on, Teresa. And then apply it to your data visualization. At the same time, Georges Hattab and I wrote, and his colleague wrote an article on 10 top rules to follow for colorizing and biomedical visualization. So, some of this. All right, so let's start with an example. The example I used before, I'm doing my walk on the American Tobacco Trail in Durham, North Carolina. I take this nice green picture, and I get this nice color scheme. So is it numerical data or just collection of things or pictures? Is it quantitative, sequential, diverging? Is it, maybe categorical? It's 3 classes of data that I'm going to do. And I'm going to build an area chart. I like area charts. I do use them a lot. What key color? We're going to try green. So, the Adobe Capture mobile app, that's the one I told you to go out and look for. Try to go and get it off of your, try to go to Adobe and get it off and put it on your phone, because it's free. It's a free app. All right, because see, then you could go out, like you can be out here and you can take a bunch of pictures that you like, and maybe you get a color scheme. Remember I told you how artists steal? That's how artists do that. They're out in the world and they go, oh, I like these color combinations. They take the color combinations. Take your favorite photograph that you like, but just take a picture of it and then capture all the colors. You don't have to, you don't have to say, hey, that was a Kandinsky painting that I took and I happen to like the colors. But if you're cool like me, you would put that in there, but that's all right. But Kandinsky didn't copyright. Artists don't copyright their color schemes, so you can still do it. All right. I wrote an article on From Camera Roll to Color Harmony, Greening and Visualization. But I got 3 classes of data. My key color is green. So step number 1. All right, so select your color rule. Is it sequential? Maybe monochromatic. Diverging? Maybe complementary. I'm going to try 3 categories. I'm going to try a triad. I'm just going to try it. I'm just experimenting. I'm going to make an area chart. I'm going to try a triad color scheme. That's what I'm going to do. You know, I'm just experimenting here. I'm not, you know, I'm going for it. So I use Adobe Color a lot. I use Pantone Connect. I use Color Brewer, many of you, but we're going to stay with color capture and in the photo. So those are the colors. When I go out to my app and I look down at it, those are the colors it's given to me. And remember I told you it's giving me the hex codes. So I know what the hex codes are. So I got myself a color scheme. All right, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to use a tool that Elijah Meeks and Susie Liu actually developed called VizPalette. And I would suggest you look at this tool if you want to really do a really quick tool for looking at color schemes. You pull it in there, you pull your color combination, so I got my hex codes, and I'm going to see what the colors look like. And Elijah and Susie, they only did protanopy and deuteranopy because 90% of the population is red-green. And so you can put that in there and see what it'll look like. It's not a good color combination. Look at it real carefully. Look at the protanopy and the deuteranopy. What's happened is you can't tell the green from the orange. Protanopy and deuteranopy. You can't tell. Da-da-da. They look the same, don't they? All right, so write that down in your notes. Just remember, man, if you're looking at green and orange, you're going to get in trouble for color deficiency. That's the thing. I'm going to the tip right away. I'm going to cover it many times in these examples, but that's the moral of this story. All right, so I got to come up with something else. My color scheme isn't working. Triad's gone. All right, so I'm going to go monochromatic because I think that's safe. I failed color deficiency back here, but I think I can pass if I go with one color and I have different shades. And sure enough, I'm going to pass. People who have color deficiency are not going to see my original color scheme, but they're going to get the difference in the data. They're going to see the gradation of the data, you see? So they're not going to see my original color scheme, but they're going to understand what's going on as to how the data is changing. So this looks like to be a good combination. That's going to work. So now I'm going to apply it. I apply it. Here it is. Man, your colors are slightly off. I can tell you, this monitor is making an olive out of a solid green here, but that's okay. Just so you know, I noticed. We'll get away with it, but come on, you guys. So it looks like on my screen. See, it doesn't look the same up there. Just tell it. See what happens, AV people, when you get a color expert up here. All right, so. Okay, so now we go back to color deficiency, and we check, and sure enough, we're going to pass protanopy, deuteranopy, tritanopy. See, now I'm going to make sure I even got the tritanopy. I want to make sure the blue cone. I don't want any mess ups, because the probability of it is tritanopy often happens, is increasingly happening if people have cancer treatments and they have themselves very heavily radiated. Sometimes there can be a loss in their blue cone. So maybe there'll be somebody looking at it that way, and I just want to make sure. So I get that, and I test it. So, hey, it works. Like I said, not my original color scheme, and that's not my original color scheme. I just showed you. But anyway, it's looking good. Done. Check, check, check. So now I'm telling you, here's how you get VizPalette. under Susie Lou's projects. And you can actually enter Chroma.js, Categorical, and Color. Are people familiar with Categorical? Categorical was a tool developed at a university, Brown University. It's another good tool you might want to look at. So, or you can enter your own hex, RGB, HSL values, and it provides color deficiency functions. And Elijah makes sure a little article on it. Okay. So I show you here using Color Brewer how you can enter actually the Color Brewer schemes directly into it, so you don't even have to enter. I mean, I sit around and I'm willing to enter my hex codes, but not everybody likes that. By the way, I want to cover on this one back here. Notice I'm using this example right here is a purple and orange combination. That's actually, I'll show it to you later in another example, but that's going to pass color deficiency. So now I wrote this article on watching for peas and carrots. It just came out, June 2022. Don't you think? I think that's relatively recent. I mean, you know, I don't know how you feel about it. But I talked about the green and orange dilemma. And here is where, remember I told you that how you can vary the midpoint? A lot of people use white midpoints. Here I'm going to use a yellow midpoint. Now, if I use a yellow midpoint and I run it through my color deficiency simulator, the midpoint's causing me a problem. But I'm failing color deficiency. Let's go through it. I got a quantitative data processing outward from a central neutral color. So I'm using a diverging color scheme of green and orange. And I'm going to select my color wheel, diverging color rule. So that's what I'm going to use. All right. Now, I'm going out to, I need to know what those hex codes are. So I'm going out to Adobe Color. I'm hitting the custom function. And Adobe Color is giving me those hex codes. So this is a tool also. If you find yourself, you've got a color scheme, and you need to know what the hex codes are, Adobe Color is your friend. You run the image through Extract Theme, and it will give you those hex codes that you need to know. Because you can't sort of go ahead and build your scheme without it. So Adobe Color has some accessibility tools functions inside of it. It has also gotten into the game of being able to do colorblind safe combinations. So I take this baby into Color Brewer, and look what I find. Colorblind safe. No conflicts. I don't have a problem, right? I don't have a problem. So I can go ahead and I can use my color scheme, right? I put it into this palette just to see, and I don't know about that. I don't know about that because it looks to me like the combinations up in here can't tell the difference. How about you? Can you tell the difference between where the green and the orange is? If you have protanopia, deuteranopia? I don't think it's passing, even though Adobe Color told me it would. It's not passing, man. It's not passing. The diverging's not causing me any problem. This is diverging right here. That's not causing me any trouble. So I say, okay. But, all right, so I build the color scheme. And what I do is I decide to look at a little more closer, the Viz palette example, a little more closer. And I decide, I don't think so. I don't think I should keep that in my color palette of color schemes. I don't think green-orange diverge works out too good. I don't think it's safe. So, what can I use? What you can use is you can decide, I came up with two options. If you have a client that says, I want the green, I like the green, I want the green, you can take purple in there. And if you run that through color deficiency, what will happen is they will see a combination that's kind of a yellowish, kind of icky yellowish, up against the purple for either protanopy or deuteranopy. But they're going to see some. They're going to see the differences in your data. Or you could decide, no, I want the orange. Then if you use the purple as your color scheme, what you'll see is that kind of combination. Again, the purple and the yellowish. And they're not going to see the exact color scheme, but they're going to be able to get the idea. So that's how you repair. You with me? That's how you repair a color scheme that turned out to be a disaster. All right. There's another way you can get out of this. And remember, I talked about double coding before. If you're actually doing a plot, plotting your data, what you can do is you make your P's circles and your carets squares, so that when you go through color deficiency, your people aren't color coding or seeing the data by color. They're seeing the data by, they see a little bit of color, but they see the change in the objects. Double coding. That's another way to get around. If you're thinking maybe you might not pass color deficiency, but you want to stay with that color scheme, that's a way to get around it. All right, now, I promised you I was going to talk a little bit about elections. In the United States, we have a convention, and that has become that Republicans are color-coded as red, and Democrats are color-coded as blue. Now, it turns out you can read a lot on this. There was a time when it was in the history of the United States where it was reversed. If you like to read Smithsonian Magazine, they did an excellent article talking about how when it was the opposite. But it turns out in around 2000, with the Gore Bush presidential election, they were doing these big monitor broadcasts. Remember, that was a very, very close election, right? People were holding your chads up, counting it. I mean, it was really, really tight election. And so there, they were broadcasting this stuff. It was red was the Republicans, that's Bush out there. Democrats was Gore. Now, I want you to look at the middle color that they used. They used the middle color as purple in those election results. This really happened. This was the states that kind of could go either way, right? Well, look at that. If you remember this, Florida was a midpoint state, right? I mean, if you remember this, historically, this is very, very accurate. So this is Florida down here where they were counting on those hanging chads and everything. So now what happens is when you use a middle color like that, there's a probability that if you have a color deficiency, you can't see the difference. You see, go across here, protanopy. If you have protanopy, those middle states, that becomes slightly blue to you. If you had deuteranopy, slightly blue. If you had tritanopy, it's slightly red. So people with color deficiencies, though it's a small percentage of the population, weren't able to completely see it. So I recommended, in analyzing it later, I wrote an article on it, I recommended that they just go and use the white, man. Don't worry about it. They just thought it'd be politically correct, to put purple because that's kind of like Democrat and Republican and it's going either way. Don't be politically correct. Just put the white in there. So that's the problem of using a midpoint like that. They didn't take my class on color theory, you see. I wrote an article on correcting an unsuccessful diverging color scheme. Now, I want to talk about the other option. If you look at Smithsonian Magazine or a lot of magazines, and you find, or various maps, you look at this is a Rand McNally map, and you find a vintage visualization and you like it. And you say to yourself, this is great because Color Brewer doesn't have that color combination. I mean, I got a unique or different color combination that not everybody else is dealing with. So I take it into Adobe Color, and I find out what my hex codes are, and I'm going to apply it. Then I'm going to tell you another little thing I did with color deficiency. So I'm going to use my 5-stage process, and I'm going to apply an alternate color scheme, the nutty color scheme. All right, so here I am. I'm taking it into Adobe Color. It's telling me what the color values are. I got it right across here. Vintage, I like to come up with cool names. Vintage Fizz, PGY. That's what I came up with. All right. And this is a cool visualization. I think this is a cool visualization, actually. So I decide I got 3 color elements, and I'm going to keep them all as my I'm going to keep them all as my key color. I'm going to apply. I'm going to check with, and sure enough, my thought is correct. Nobody else. Adobe, Color Brewer doesn't have it. Adobe Color doesn't often have it. It's going to be a unique color scheme. It's going to be really cool. And so what? Somebody did it hundreds of years ago. What difference does it make? Somebody's invented. People think I'm new, I'm modern, I'm cool. By the way, people do that all the time. Don't think like designers, somebody like Michael Kors, don't think he doesn't go back to 1970s and see what some other designer did and say, I think I'll make this look like 2023. So, but anyway, I told the artist. All right, so now I'm going to continue to use this tool and look in more detail and build a color suggestion tool. All right, so here we go. And now I take it through the Adobe accessibility tools. And no conflicts found. Now remember though, I got to be careful, right? Because we did this once before and it didn't go out so good. So, all right. Adobe, the great thing about Adobe's color deficiency, now this is the only one that's different. I recommend using it. Adobe will give you ways that you can reposition your color combination to pass color deficiency. Now, it might not necessarily be your original monochromatic, or it might not necessarily be your original color scheme, but it will give you suggestions on how to reposition. That can come out handy. Because if you're under a tight deadline and you've got to have a color scheme, this is a quick way. Adobe will really help you with that. And I've written a number of articles that show you how I repositioned and did that. All right. So now I'm going to do my little ring chart. I'm going to apply it. And my data deals with walnuts, peanuts, and cashews. Remember, kind of like what we had for a little break, right? So I want to, in my pantry. So, and I got a kind of a donut visualization. So and I do my color deficiency test. And I go in there. And I like this color. It seems to correspond to my walnuts, peanuts, and cashews. The simulation, the Dunor-Nopi simulation, gives me a color scheme that I like a little better, even though I worked so hard on it, than the vintage one. I like it better. So I apply it. And I think, I call it my nutty scheme. I think, well, there's a good probability it's going to pass color deficiency. Now, that doesn't always happen. Sometimes you can find something that might pass Tridenopi and fail Dunor-Nopi and Proto-Nopi. But I think maybe it's got a promise here. So I go back in, and yay, I'm lucky. I'm lucky. My color deficiencies, remember, these are simulations people have made. So you're running it through somebody else's program or simulator. But anyway, that's what I got it. And I decide, yeah. So now I want to talk about it. I have not used any scientific visualization examples. And my field for a long time was scientific visualization at the Environmental Protection Agency. And so I thought I'd run through this, color brewing the perfect storm. And I'd run through actually a visualization I did way back when I didn't know that much about color. But I managed to get it right. And I thought I'd share with you sort of what I did. And I wrote this up during the COVID nightingale. During my COVID nightingale era, shall we say. All right, and I'm going to do it with my 5 steps. So, for this particular visualization, it is a large simulation. So it's huge simulation code. So you're going to sparingly, you want to sparingly do your model runs. The more you can come up with your color scheme and get everything together before they have to execute time on your high-performance computing environment, the more they're going to love you and your work. So one of the things I often say about and talk about is I try to get it right in black and white. So I'm looking at this visualization, and I'm pretty much figured out what I need to get right in black and white. I need to have the hurricane stand out. I need to have those wind vectors. The wind vectors are necessary towards the meteorologist because this is going to be sort of a simulation based on, it's a perfect storm, but based on Hurricane Katrina data. And they need to know where the wind vectors are at all times, what the directions are. I need to have a land mass for geographic. They need to know that's hitting Florida, and it's hitting, Louisiana, those particular types of things, and the Caribbean. And I'm going to try a purple isosurface. I decided I want to try a purple isosurface for this thing. So that's what I did. So rainwater is going to appear over top of the GLW data. So remember, I've got multiple data sets. And what I'm going to do is make the color. This is not like information visualization where I specify the hex code. What I'm doing is I'm doing a simulation. And the computer is going to make the colors. The simulation is going to make the colors for me. So I'm rolling some dice here. So I'm going to use Color Brewer to think it out. Because they don't want me to run, excessive simulations. So I go through my ideas with Color Brewer. And I go, okay. So if I combine magenta and cyan together, I can get that purple. And so my data elements, my rainwater and GLW data combined together, I might be able to produce a purple isosurface. I might fail, but I might be able to pull it off. And it did work. It did work. You can imagine how I'm looking at every single frame, so relieved the thing worked when it happened. So now I've got, I'm down with the color wheels, on color rules and everything in my color theory. And the GLW is going to cover the ocean surface. So I have to come up with my wind vectors, and they have to be able to show through the purple. And I decide, I like what Cynthia Brewer did with purple and orange in terms of her maps. Now remember something, Color Brewer is about static maps. It's not about the thing moving around. And I'm making a guess. I'm making a guess that I might be able to pull off orange vectors. And also, my land mass is going to be in the cyan, dark blue ranges. And that's complementary to orange. So I might be able to pull that off. So those are those combinations I've got. So sure enough, this is what is in Color Brewer. And everybody thinks I'm a lunatic, but I'm sitting there staring at this thing for a long time, I think. I think I can pull it off. So I go down, and the other thing I need to know is, am I going to pass color deficiency? Because it would be such a shame to produce one of these gorgeous animations that people who had a color deficiency couldn't see. And I see that Color Brewer is telling me that it, and remember, I haven't got an image I can run through Cobblest, right? because I'm sitting here sparing my computational time. So I'm going to have to take Color Brewer's word for it that he's going to pass color deficiency. Otherwise, I'm going to be back finding another color scheme. All right, so I'm in black and white, and I go into color. And that's what I get. Wasn't I lucky? I'm making it sound a lot easier, but man, this was weeks and weeks and weeks of work here, because we're trying to think about how these data sets are and how they combine and what's looking at. And then my colleagues are trying to get the data working so that they can even create a picture and a display, So we're trying, and I'm lucky. I really am. I consider this luck. It looks like this thing's going to work. Okay? So we have a few more meetings, a little more conversation, and we go, let's try it. Let's try it. My colleague Steve Shaw did the visualization programming. He did it in a tool called Visit. I don't know if anybody's ever used it. It's Department of Energy. And you know what? Take a still frame and I think, oh man, did I pass color deficiency? Because the movie's already gone over really great. And the Department of Energy's already given it an award. I'm in big trouble. But what if people have color deficiency, this thing's broadcast on television, nobody can see it? Again, I really lucked out. Because if you have protanopy, those wind vectors are going to turn yellow. So you're still going to see the combination. It's going to be close enough. And if you have deuteranopy, the same. And if you have tritanopy, it's going to be close enough that you'll enjoy the visualization. And you won't say to me like the guy at EPA said to me years ago, I can't see it. So here's a color scheme. If I have capabilities, I don't always have the basic capabilities, but I think I can run the video. Otherwise, you can go find it on YouTube. I give you the URL to it. I think. Make sure there's no audio. No audio. Because there is audio on it. All right. So here's the mixing, right? Let's go back to the very beginning. You can imagine the jubilation I felt when that thing went down there. Let's look at it again. When that thing went down there, and that hurricane formed a purple isosurface, and those wind vectors stayed there, given the directions, given an accurate meteorology forecast of what was going on, and the color held, and it hits up there. Now remember, I know I'm going to be broadcast on TV, and I'm telling you right now, I've already showed to you what's on my monitor is not up there on the projector. So I'm knowing this thing is going to be broadcast all over the world on projection systems. And I'm just thrilled that people are going to be able to see this thing accurate. It was a big deal for me. So let's watch it one more time. And of course, everybody else involved too. It was a huge team effort. I just got to be the colorizer. There was a whole lot of people working on trying to get the computational model to work and getting all this stuff laid down, the meteorology correct. It came out really good. I was a little tyke in the background. Those are all the people involved. It was done at North Carolina State. At the time, I was this director of something called a Renaissance Computing Institute. But I did colorization. My colleagues would colorize and then say, Teresa, does it look all right? And then eventually, I would write a book. So here's the logos. I think we should give everybody credit because I posted it all. I hate it when they end those videos. How many of you sit in a movie theater and watch every last credit? Because a lot of people in computer animation are the last ones credited. And if I want to see my friends I'm going to give you an example. Paul Debbick. You know who Paul Debbick is? You better be nodding, yeah, because Paul Debbick just got a Lifetime Emmy Award for all the effects he's done in computer animation. I'm going to give you some Pat Hanrahan. You all know who Pat Hanrahan, Renderman, right? So if you want to watch, you need to watch, as in their early work, their credits came up at the very end in the movie. Just pointing out to you. Because that's where it was. I mean, that was where it was ranked with regards to, I mean, the actors had a little more priority, you know? So if your friends do this for a living, so here it is. I'm the last one, you know, they're sweeping the popcorn away, right? And Teresa's sitting there. I said, no, my friend's name. I know he did that movie, I know, and I want to see his name. So, all right, so I used my imagination, asked myself, what if I were able to go back to, or be in the, fast forward into the future and use the Albers app? So I did a paper, little write-up for Data Visualization Society on that. All right, so I want to cover this. I want to give you a little tip. I like to publish in Nightingale, in US Collective. Do you guys have any concept as to why I like to do that, other than the fact I like to write? Okay, how many of you have had a paper published with IEEE? Okay, what did you sign over? You signed a copyright for it, didn't you? And you're so proud of it. And you're so happy you're at IEEE Biz that you're going to give your paper, aren't you? Aren't you proud? What if you want to use those images in a commercial piece of work? Dear IEEE, could I please have permission to use my image that I published at IEEE Viz 2022? Dear author, no, you are going to make lots of money off of it. Dear IEEE, could I please have permission to use my image for a nonprofit activity for the federal government? IEEE, yes. Okay, that is why when you published with Medium, which is a very, very large one, when you publish with US Collective, when you publish with Nightingale, you retain the author. You retain all the words, you retain all the imagery. To me, it's a big deal because I illustrate and I write. And I don't want to lose the images. Now, there's a way around it. Sheila Carperdale actually handled it. But what she had to do is she had to make all her images public, open source. She had to make all of her images open source before she signed the copyright with IEEE. Because they're open source images, IEEE, she doesn't have to ask IEEE. I'm just pointing out, this is why you need to consider this if you're an image maker. And in color, I'm an image maker. I'm a little different in visualization. A lot of people practice in visualization, and they're really about the method that they developed. Their paper is more on the methodology, and they think, well, I can create another image. I can make another image. I'll be all right. For somebody like me, I'm very interested in the color image that I created, and I don't want to give it away just like that. I just don't want to blindly give it away. And then I started thinking about, well, wait a minute. Why is it that I never had this problem when I wrote these articles for IEEE? And then I realized, oh yeah, I wrote a book. And all the images are copyrighted, under me. So IEEE can't have them. It's another way around it. I'm just pointing out. Just things for you to think about in the future, you know? I tell you, you think I'm silly? You're reading all these things about how Bob Dylan sold all his rights for so forth and so forth, right? Beatles can't do that. A major part of the Beatles' body of work was owned by the recording label. Michael Jackson bought all those rights. Somebody else, I think Yoko Ono has tried to buy a lot of them back. I'm just pointing out to you, you got to try to get those rights back because they can't control the release of their own quality. So I'm saying it could really be a big issue. Now you say, oh, I'm not going to be something like that. Well, maybe. But maybe your favorite image you can't get. I'm just pointing out to you. All right. My little lecture, I hope I've not offended anybody with regards to that. All right, I'm going to now we talked earlier about hue chromoluminance tools for perceptual uniform color spaces. All right, so there's 3 of them that are, they're publicly available to you. Color Picker for data, I Want Hue, HCL Wizard. Now, Color Picker for data is a nice, I wrote a bunch of articles in Nightingale about each one of the tools. So you can go and use it. Apparently people like that article. Nightingale converted, used to be under medium. Then they decided that they didn't like being under medium because to belong to medium, to have unlimited access to all the articles in it. And Nightingale wanted to make it so that you could have unlimited access for free. So they went off to their own thing and converted some. They didn't convert every single thing I wrote for them. It's still some of it's still under medium. When I write for UX Collective, I'm under medium. All right. So here's Color Picker for data. I really like this tool. But it's one guy who built a tool, so it's got some basics in it. And it's an incredible tool. So you can see like he's using luminance, held constant, 12 color swatches. And what I did was, and what I'm trying to tell you is, I used this tool to build that color wheel. I realized that I could use Color Picker for data to build this nice little color wheel that I showed you earlier. And now that I have the color wheel, I can run it through Color Blindness Simulator, and I can hold these images, and I can figure out which ones are going to pass color deficiency. So I'm going to try to pick some colors that are of different ranges. But notice how really, when you're in an HCL color space, how really narrow that range is for protanopy, deuteranopy, and even tritanopy. I mean, it's a narrow range. So I discovered that this one will work. It has a probability of passing color deficiency. It passes color deficiency. Like I say, you don't see the original color scheme, but you're getting a combination. And use Copeless to check it. All right. So I Want Hue. This is another really cool scheme. And so it generates color schemes based on some pre-specified color spaces. They claim it has some artificial intelligence in it. I don't know. It's generated something. And it's agreeing. I created the schemes. I like the scheme called ICE4. And it created these color schemes. I ran it through a Biz palette. I thought it was interesting. And you can see it's passing color deficiency. Look, it's passing with the area charts. Remember how much I love these area charts. And it passes. So, now, it also, that tool, let me go back. This tool, I Want Hue, claims to have a color deficiency simulator in it. I have run it, and I've not felt comfortable with the results. I'm nervous about doing the I Want Hue results, just like I don't always use Adobe Color's color simulator as my final choice. So now, probably one of the most powerful, I think one of the more powerful tools is something like a combination of a color suggestion tool like Color Brewer. It really is a color suggestion system with recommendations for, especially using an R. The people who wrote it are experts. So I'm going to give you an example. This is a particular Likert chart that strongly agree, neutral, disagree, strongly agree. Okay. And I'm going to go through and take you through. Now we know we know what it means if you use orange and green, right? We know that I'm on shaky ground. So now this is a color scheme that's sitting in HCL Wizard. It's sitting in the thing. So you can go to HCL Wizard and pick this color scheme. And if you do, you're in trouble. I'm going to tell it to you right now. Now, oh, by the way, HCL Wizard. Oh, HCL Wizard will give you, not only will it give you a color scheme, but it'll also give you some nice little bar chart examples, which I think are really neat, so you can look at it. It's a really, really powerful tool. You can see I reverse the colors. I really recommend looking at HCL Wizard. And they've got basic diverging, advanced diverging, a sequential, qualitative. Like I said, very similar to kind of the way Color Brewer likes to do things. So if you go in there, you will find out that you will pass tritanopy, but you will fail deuteranopy and protanopy. You will fail your loss of green cone, and you'll fail your loss of red cone. You can't, there's a slight difference, but especially at protanopy, I don't think the difference is enough. It's too close for me, too close for comfort. So I go back, I look at advanced diverging. This is what HCL Wizard gives. It gives me a lot of options, don't you think? And look at how HCL Wizard also gives me a dark. Isn't that interesting? A dark midpoint. It's going to produce a very different effect. But I'm not going to discuss it today, but you go and you try it yourself. But anyway, what I'm going to do is going to take the magenta and the green. Now, in HCL Wizard, they call that red and green. I don't know. You see what I mean by people who call their colors? If I was working with somebody in Germany, he would tell me, put the red and green combination, and would be very upset with me because I wouldn't have put magenta in there as red. But anyway, so it passes. Let me go back again. I got too excited. Oh, God. Get too excited, everybody. I get so excited because I love this stuff so much. Gotta do it again. All right, so here I am. I'm with it. I'm going for it. And I'm running through my simulator. HCL Wizard simulator. Notice I'm not using the color blindness simulator. I'm using what HCL Wizard provides me. And I check. I think it's a pretty good simulator. I like it. But remember, you can mess with the knobs a little bit, which you can't do in color. You can mess with it a little bit. But it is not a tool like Adobe Color for making a color scheme. God, you don't want to talk to me. I'm sorry. I'm in the middle of a tutorial. I don't have time to talk to you. Go away. Excuse me, nobody calls me. All right. So anyway, so I like the magenta and I like the green. All right, so I can use the export function in HCL, and it's going to give me those hex codes. Remember, hex codes are critical because that's what you gotta have to enter into your visualization. And I'm going to apply it to my Likert chart, and there it is. I feel pretty good about it. Now, I run the color deficiency set. Now, here's my experience. Even though you'll pass it in HCL Wizard, you want to run it through your actual images of your actual visualization with the color blindness simulator. Because what you might have found worked in this Adobe Color simulation or in the Color Brewer simulation or whatever might not work for your particular visualization. Maybe your background doesn't work. I always I do a final check after I've applied it to my visualization. I always use the color blindness simulator, and I pass. Now, I wanted to show you this. I think it's really amazing that magenta and green harmony in an Adobe color, so that's considered a complementary color harmony, matches up very well with the diverging pink, yellow, green combination in Color Brewer and with HCL Wizard. Isn't it fascinating how you can get similar results? I think it's cool. You got to be a color geek maybe to appreciate this. But I think it's fascinating that you can come up with similar results with very different tools. So I showed you that. Now, there's a little problem. We're in HCL. HCL, we've been talking about display spaces, right? R is a display space. But what if you got to print the thing? Remember, you did so well with your visualization that you got to print it out, or you got a printer, or your company's going to make a big poster of it. You got a little problem. Here's the problem. HCL color space, and you go and you look at HCL Wizard, doesn't give you CMYK values to tell your printer anything. Nothing. You have no clue as to what you're going to tell your printer. Well, you see, I use this HCL Wizard. It's a perceptual uniform tool. It's the greatest thing in the world. Reason for, oh, you want to print it. I don't know what the CMYK values are. So you got to find a tool that gives you those examples. So you could try RGB to CMYK. All that means is you put in your image, like this image, and you put it in here. Look what you'd get. You'd get an image that was completely different from what you designed, right? You thought it was bad what I covered earlier, but that's really bad, isn't it? That's what I call really bad. And you'd be in big trouble. Or you could go back and try to match up Pantone colors to it, which could be a challenge too. Because see, what's happening is you've got to go from HCL to CMYK. So you're going to have to go back through RGB color space. So there's, as far as I can tell, there's no way to go from straight HCL to CMYK. You got to convert back to RGB to CMYK. Now you might say that's not important. Well, it becomes very important if you're trying to do it. So I'm just telling you that what you're going to use, and there's a tool, and I wrote about it. There's a tool in Rapid Tables. It's called Rapid Tables, where you type in your hex codes from here. You're going to type in your hex codes. You're going to get what the actual hex values are for each of those colors in the mosaic. And it's going to give you the CMYK codes. And that's what you're going to specify your printer. And you're going to look real careful at the results and make sure you get it. Or what you're going to do, you're going to use Pantone Connect that you paid for every single month. You paid a subscription to. Maybe you've got a graphic designer at your university that pays for this Pantone Connect. And you say, please, pretty please, pretty please. And they give you the Pantone colors for that combination. But there's no way that I know of, and I'm waiting for somebody to tell me that you can go straight from HCL to CMYK. And I wrote a little article on it. So now I want to talk about how you uncolorize a visualization. Yes, we're going to uncolorize it. So I did this visualization myself. And I used the idea of categorical, a different color. And in the process of doing it, I had to put these little numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on it, because when it went through a color blindness simulator, it didn't pass and everything. But I came up with this nice little visualization. And somebody said, you know, you could have passed the color blindness simulator if you used a different color scheme. I thought, oh, really? Isn't that great? I'm a color expert and somebody's telling me that. So I look at it and I go, all right, so there's my original. no implied differences, but I got up to 5 colors, so I didn't pass color deficiency. Maybe I should consider sequential color sequence. Maybe. So I go, okay. Here is a color deficiency that is for this original. You see, it's not passing. You can tell I'm not passing color deficiency. I had to put the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 because I went up to 5. Earlier I told you 5's dicey. But what I do is I take it into black and white, and I start staring, and I come up with what I start staring at things. I said, I should use a sequential combination because you see how you can tell the difference at 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I say, give it a shot. I'm passing color deficiency. Give it a shot. Let's try red. And I picked the color brewer one. I'm just using color brewer. I'm just experimenting here. And I picked the red. I go, hey, man, this is passing. I get all excited. I'm still not going to get rid of those numbers, though. I'm not all that confident. But I get those numbers, and I send it through the color blindness simulator, and it passes, right? You can see the differences. And I kind of like that. Hey, it worked. But you know, I myself don't like a sequential single hue. Where, remember I said single hue, so that's a red with a tone, and then a tint, and then a shade kind of combination. I don't really like that. That's what I got here. So I go, I'm going to try a multi-hue. Dicey because it could fail. Could fail. So I decide to take one of these, and I say, okay, it's saying, Color Brewer's telling me it'll pass. I'm going to use this color combination. I kind of like the differences in the colors and how it kind of moves around. I kind of like that. You know? And I hope Cynthia Brewer's right on her analysis. So I run it through. Yay, it passes, look. It passes color blindness test, color deficiency test. It passes them. I'm okay. So I have 2 options. And it really is what you prefer. Some people might like the single hue, and some people might like the multi-hue. It's up to you. Then I decided I want to zone in. I talk about getting it right in black and white. And I want to do some of this grayscale stuff. And I want to try to examine this further. So what I over time had this grayscale sequence for 11 steps, data visualization. And I wanted to compare it up against what Ansel Adams did, called the zone system. People familiar with the zone system of photography? It's his classic thing for doing black and white. It's an important system that you want to do if you're going to ever do black and white photography professionally. So I decided to sort of experiment what it would look like. I came pretty darn close. Now here's what I found. When you get in these lower ranges, 0 up into 3, it's hard to tell the difference. They're different colors, but visually our eyes can't tell that. They're definitely different colors in terms of grayscale, but our eyes have a lot of trouble seeing it. So, and your midpoint. Now, this is called an achromatic color scheme, and it progresses from light to dark across in here. And it's focused on the relationship between the, when I did this achromatic color scheme, and I developed it for this particular visualization because I wanted to focus on the geographic coordinates. When I colorized it, I wanted to focus on the hurricane movement around. Yes, ma'am.
So they're
You're going to have to take your mask off. I can't hear it.
So they're asking, do you not like single visualizations in general, or just for the specific example you pointed out? If the former, can you explain why?
Oh man, I just happen to like, for my really circle that I made, I like the variance in the color for that particular problem. I would not pick a preference for one or the other. So thank you very much for asking that question online. And I'm so happy to know that somebody online is listening. But no, I don't particularly have a preference in terms of general about color schemes. It's of the particular situation I was in. I just liked the one. And that was my preference. I also indicated that you, when I wrote the article, you might like the red preference. You might like that one better. Because I can't tell what other people particularly like. It was my particular preference for that particular problem. But everyone has a different kind, and your client has difficult situations. So there are many color schemes I have designed that my client liked better than I did. And I accepted that. So people's preferences for color change. So I don't think do's and don'ts it's not a good idea. It's just a good idea to sort of look at that. But thank you very much. I'm so happy that somebody asked that question. Now, right here, I'm going to talk about creating in black and white a sequential color scheme and then a diverging color scheme. What you can do, your middle color is gray here. Remember, I'm in black and white. This is not common. So I'm going to move this back here and put my middle color as white. And I can create a diverging color scheme. If there's ever a situation where you have to stay in black and white, this is a good possibility to use. So now, this is another one of preference. You might have designed this wonderful area chart that was very Perry Shamrock diverging color scheme. Shamrock is a Pantone color, very Perry is the color of the year. And you might love that color. But you might be out there and you say, you know, I like the grayscale area chart better. I like that one better. See, this goes back to that other question. I mean, that's preference. It's not saying one's better than that. It's just saying, I just like the grayscale area chart better. I like it. So you pick it. I wouldn't say there was a color theory rule for that. It's just preference. And maybe next week I like the very Perry Shamrock. Who knows? So I wrote this book, and I'm going to hold it up too. I wrote this book. It published, it says 2016. I was actually right. I actually wrote the book all through 2016, and the publication date says 2017 on it, because when they finally filed all the copyrights and everything, it was 2017. It was actually finished in 2016, but the official copyright. Let's not make sure I'm not saying something wrong here. Yeah, it says 2017. See, that goes to show sometimes you have to go and talk to the author about some things, because the author knows some things that happened while they were in publication, which you might not know as the book goes on in time. I'm going to give you, how many people know who he's passed on, but Bill Lorenzen was? He defined something called marching cubes. How many people know the marching cubes algorithm? Okay, it's pretty much a classic. There was a game developer article that cited and had only read the articles. They didn't know Bill personally. They only read the articles, and they cited some things about progression of how things had happened over time. And Bill read the article, and he said, well, it didn't really happen that way. Actually, we were ahead of these people. We were ahead of these people, but we got delayed in terms of the cigarette paper could come out. But we are credited as having come up with the idea, and our patent has. It just goes to show, unless you really know the actual people involved, you might not know the whole inside story. Just thought I would tell you that. So that's why you will go back and you say, Teresa Marie told me she wrote that book in November 2016, and I have her book in front of me, and the copyright says 2017. I didn't lie to you. I finished it November 2016, but by the time they published it, it was 2017. So anyway, I cover various apps in it. You might like it. I think I color Adobe Color, Color Brewer, walk through some things. I loved writing it. I really loved every inch of it. So, Adobe Capture is a free mobile app I told you a lot about. Pantone Connect, $5 a month. But if you were a graphic designer, you'd pay those $5 to get that library. You consider that to be nothing. Adobe Color, the grandmother of us all. Palladium is one that I really, really love. Now, Palladium's a very interesting online tool in that it's based on red, blue, and yellow is its color model. The guy programmed it in that. So all your results will be red, blue, and yellow, even though you're seeing it in RGB on the screen. I just think it's fascinating. Color Brewer, Viz Palette. Yes, ma'am?
Can you hear me? Yeah. Are there good use cases you've seen for the rainbow color scheme, given that it does not have uniform distribution between the colors, especially with climate models and other such scientific visualizations?
Honey, I can't hear you through the mask. You're going to have to take that mask off.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Are there good use cases you've seen for the rainbow color scheme, given that it does not have uniform distribution between the colors, especially with climate models and other such scientific visualizations?
Yes. And I mentioned earlier, earlier in section 1 of this tutorial, that there is going to be a visualization viewpoints paper. I will not be writing, I'm the editor of that department, but I will not be writing that paper that talks about the use of the rainbow color map in a positive way after really giving consideration to that. So yes, there's new work coming out in visualization research that supports continuing to use the rainbow color map. So do I have examples? Well, stay tuned in 2023 because they're going to have a lot of examples for it. But there are several people looking at this particular problem that the rainbow color map can actually be a good solution to use. I actually did some work for the University of Utah way back when, where that I showed an earlier example of a rainbow color map that did path, was uniformly distributed. I used that, and we were able to make the visualization. Let me try to finish here, and let me finish this, and I'll come back and use that. So here's a color blindness simulator. I'm telling you where you can find color deficiency examples. This is your perceptual uniformity. This is me thanking everybody. Georges Hatab has edited so many of my writings. Maria Vilas, Fabrico, they have been my editors in terms of publishing, and I'm very indebted to so many family members. Now, we're going to have to get back. I'm so glad there's a question. All right, let's see if I can find. You're going to need, everybody, you're going to need to be patient with me because I've got to go through that entire slide set from when I got to the rainbows. All right. All right, this is part 1. I do apologize that you're flashing through signs, but I did some work for the University of Utah where we used something that was very close to the rainbow color map that passed deficiency but did not have the artifact in it. I'm just trying to find out where it is. And this is the, oh God, what did I like it? I went too fast, I'm sorry. It's got to be here. All right, here it is. Let me play it up here. This is an example that I developed by hand at the bottom. that I applied to some work at the University of Utah. It passed perceptual uniformity and color deficiency. It's an example of something that most people would look at and say, hey, that's a rainbow color map. It's pretty darn close. It's not, you can see I got rid of the artifacts and the banding that was in the yellow region, and I got rid of the banding that was in the green region. So affirmative. Yes, there are examples. But you're going to have to work hard to make it. I mean, I worked hard on it. I won't deny it. I won't deny it. I was very pleased with the results. I hope I answered that question. Anything else I need to answer? We're at the end of the road, everybody. This is it. And you know what? We got like 4 minutes to 12, so we're right on. Anybody else got another question I want to ask? I had a great time doing this. As you know, as I hope I've shown to you, I love to talk about color, get up and discuss it. Stay tuned for my latest writing. So, anything else? Yes, ma'am. No, you want to go, hey, hand her a mic. And lower your mask. I'm sorry. You're going to be more help than you ever thought you would ever be, ma'am.
So I wanted to ask, have you thought about something that's that's sort of going from you've got a data going from like state A to state B, but it's not really diverging in the sense of wanting a middle that's different.
Okay.
Have you thought about how you might do that kind of a color map?
Okay. Color Brewer does that for 4 data classes that you could produce. So as long as you have an even number, you can make that color map that way if you want to do that. That's the easiest way to do that. Or you can make that color map yourself. So you just eliminate. So what you do is, like if I'm rolling my own, I just eliminate the white color and put the combination together. Is that what you were looking for? I mean, I've done that many, many times. I think.
We have another question.
So, by the way, that's on the front page. That's on the front of my book, by the way, ma'am. See, I just eliminated the middle color. Yeah?
So someone is asking, do you know the percentage of people with color deficiencies?
Oh, gosh. It's something like less than 1% or something. It's a very small percentage of people. Yes, sir.
Hi. Do you think there could be an use case for a tool where we can manually make one region of the color map have more gradation and not do that via data normalization, but through manually tweaking the color map? Because we might want certain regions of the visualization to have more nuance and more detail, but other regions to be more flat.
Sure.
But usually, like all the color maps are uniform, and to achieve non-uniformity, we need to do data normalizations instead of or manually tweak it.
Right. Well, you know, the example I showed you of the Munsell color system earlier, were you here in the morning? I showed of the Munsell color system that says that we understand more in a region of red, orange than we do in, I'm trying to find that site, than we do in terms of a blue-green. And that's an example of actually where you can make a color map. Let's go here. Let's go all the way down to Munsell. I'm doing this on the fly, so folks. So here's an example right here, right? There's your example. Right? That's your example. I mean, you can apply that example right there. So you could come up with a visualization like that, and there'd be nothing wrong with it. So and you can, merge them together and stuff like that. Yeah. I think you can do a visualization. Yes, ma'am.
We got another one. Do you have any recommendations on how to choose color in dark mode screen?
In dark mode,
Screen, so dark mode for screens.
I'm thinking about that. So when you're in dark mode, do you mean the situation where your middle color is going to be black, if you're looking at that? Yeah. And I don't want to tell you that much, except to tell you that it will be out in November. The answer is I have written the article, and I'm not ready. It's actually on this computer, but I'm not ready to show it to you. So I've done a lot of thought about the difference between having a white mid-color and a black mid-color, and what that's going to affect how that's going to affect your visualization. So the question is very astute, and I have truly thought about it, but I'm not willing to share the results because I'm not ready to publish it yet. There is a difference between how the colors are combined. In dark mode, you tend to go from light into dark rather than a typical diverging color scheme goes from, let me see if I remember that right. Let me try. You go light, and then you go into the white midpoint. Anyway, there's a different way you can build the color scheme. And I've thought about it. And I'm not going to describe it right. I just can't give you all my results. I'm sorry. Oh, thank you for holding the hand up and making me feel better. I don't know whether Nightingale will take it. So I may have to go to pray that UX Collective does. Sometimes when I get out there with something like that, UX Collective likes it a little better because they're looking at how user interfaces. They look at that a little. Sometimes it's a little too on the fringe of visualization. I'm too out of the visualization realm. It makes people feel happy. We'll see what happens. I mean, I don't even have, like I said, it's so new, I don't have a publisher for it yet. I'm just going to hope that it'll go for it. But I thought a lot about it. All right, what do we have? See, now you guys know what your future is, right? So you're just going to have to watch for when my next writing is. You're going to have to follow me, TM Ryan, on Twitter or something like that, and find out what the next article is, what's next in store. Okay, any more? Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's say you have some qualitative data. You have selected your palette. It passes all the color efficiency tests. How exactly do you assign the color to the different visual elements? Because I assume when elements in a visualization are visually close, you want to assign some perceptually different color to them. Do you have like any best practice or tips on that?
Wow, that really is your preference. I mean, how you want it to be. If you have elements that are that different, you must have elements that are different. Like I only had a circle, so I was only considering slices. If you have elements that are different from each other, like in a map or something like that. For example, I mean, if you were doing corn, I wouldn't make the corn red, because people are thinking tomatoes, I would try to at least assign the color that's within some kind of visual preference to people that are going to be looking at the data. But that becomes really how much you want to do it. I don't think I can make that kind of call, because it's very personal, becomes how you want to design your visualization. I'm sorry I punted on that, but what I would caution you is don't come up with colors that don't make you can make grapes green, because I've got some in my house that are green, but don't make grapes orange, because that's going to make people go, whoa, that type of thing. So I hope that helps. All right, everybody, I loved it. Thank you. I'm supposed to be done. I'm past the magic time. Student volunteers left. She's gone on. Okay, if you want to come up and talk to me, I'm gonna be hanging. I gotta take my Mac down and everything. I'll be here for a little bit. Some of you don't feel comfortable. I'm like that. But I'm going to tell you something. I've been to almost every Viz conference. And get over your fear of asking a question. Just get over it and do it. Ask a question, grow yourself, learn more. If you're afraid, don't. Don't be afraid, because there's no question that's inappropriate. And if somebody gives you a bad attitude, well, then you got a good idea. Also, the other trick is somebody gives you a bad attitude, because I had that on color. I mean, I used to ask color questions and I'm like, why should I care? But look, I wrote a book on the subject, see, years later. So, just because they didn't care didn't mean the idea wasn't good. So I'm going to give you that advice in terms of, nobody asked me advice about my career or whatever. I'm going to give you advice. Get over. You're at a conference where you're with some of the top people in the world. Ask them questions. Be around them. Okay. It's my 2 cents.